ahead and get started this evening, and the two gentlemen that are running late can join us when they arrive. So at this time, I'm going to call to order our regular session of March 28, 2017. The first order of business we have this evening is the opening prayer and the pledges of allegiance to the flags of the United States and the state of Texas. Councilman Crawford will lead us in the opening prayer and in the pledges. If you'll join me in standing, please.
Let us pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, you have revealed in your word that all authority and government are in keeping with your divine will and order. Keep us mindful of the sacred trust which you have committed to our care by using us in the various offices and services to which you have called us. Give us wisdom and understanding that we may perform our duties of our office for your glory and for the good of our fellow citizens. Grant us your grace that we may never use our office to enrich ourselves or to serve our own interests. Bless our meeting and hear our prayer through Jesus Christ, your Son, our Lord. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag, pledges allegiance to one state, one God, one indivisible. Thank you, Mr. Crawford. If there are any students that have not signed up for the Hal Baldwin Scholarship that you're participating in that, if you haven't signed up yet, please do. I think that at least 3 signatures I saw were already on the page in the back. Secondly, you might notice the projectors and the screens that we have, and the big one up here behind us isn't working. That projector has been there, I think, probably since we opened this building, and it is essentially failed. So temporarily, we have these screens that we'll be making use of. And with that said, we will move on to the course of the meeting. So we'll start with city events and announcements. Start with announcements of upcoming city events. Who has that one this evening, Mr. James?
I do. Not a city event per se, but a City of Cibolo event. This Friday, March 31st, is the Guns N' Hoses basketball game at Steele High School from 7 to 9. It's a game between the Cibolo Fire Department and police departments, and the game will benefit a local food bank. Friday, March 31st, Saturday, April 1st, the Schertz Library will be having their book sale. Friday, that's 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Saturday, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Wednesday, April 5th, the Military Affairs Committee of the Chamber of Commerce is having their meeting from 11:30 to 12:30 at the Chamber of Commerce, and you can contact them for more information. Thursday, April 13th, is the Community Volunteer Fair. That's in the Civic Center from 5:30 to 7. Again, you can contact the City Secretary's office for more information there. Tuesday, April 18th, is the Council on the Go Town Hall meeting. We're going to have that at Cibolo Valley Elementary School, the cafeteria, kicking off at 6:30. We think that gives us enough space given the turnout we had at the last Council on the Go. Saturday, April 8th, is JBSA Retiree Appreciation Day. That's at the Randolph Kendrick Club from 8:15 to noon to celebrate retirees and their spouses of all the services and catch up with folks. TML is having on Friday, April 7th and Friday, May 12th, their legislative updates webinars over at the City Building in one of our conference rooms from 10:30 to 11:30 to catch up on what the legislature's done. And then the TML wrap-up will be on Friday, June 30th. The last thing to remind you is we're going to be holding a workshop or work session at next Tuesday's council meeting to give a council an update on the comprehensive land use plan amendment in southern Schertz, south of Randolph, associated with the joint land use study. Planning and Zoning Commission considered that at their last meeting, and again, rather than just have that hit council on the 11th for action, we thought it might make sense to have a work session to go through that, answer any questions, to be a little more prepared for the 11th.
Thank you, Mr. James. Next thing on the agenda this evening, announcements and recognitions by the city manager, Mr. Kessel.
Well, I just have a couple of thank yous. One, thank you to STRAC for letting us use their short-range projectors. From the audience, you can't see that these are short-range projectors, but from up here on the dais, it's pretty impressive. They're about 3.5 feet from the screen. They do a really nice job, and those are borrowed from STRAC. Secondly, I'd like to thank staff and City Council for the 2 days of pre-budget retreat. I thought those were very informative. We got some good direction, some good ideas, very solid work. Also, I think I learned a new expression, putting up guardrails when talking about financial controls. So very, very, I think, fantastic. And I just especially want to say thank you to the City Council for all of the participation that day. And finally, I wanted to announce that the Schertz Economic Development Corporation would like to have a joint meeting with the City Council to talk about some of the different ideas where we can work together between the city and the Economic Development Board and make sure that everybody's seeing the world kind of the same way. And so we'll work to get that scheduled. We'll probably try to do it in a joint City Council format so that we would just set up here during the regular meeting and have the first part of the meeting be that joint meeting unless council had a different idea as to how to do that. So we're looking probably in April, maybe as late as May, but we'd like to do that in April.
Very good. Thank you, sir. I'm going to skip around just a little bit here at the beginning and go from rather the presentation that's up next to the workshops and ask if we can have the presentation update from the Guadalupe County, the Guadalupe Regional Medical Center, and Dr. Riggs will give you an opportunity to come up first. And if you have to drive back towards Seguin, we'll get you out of here. Uvalde, New Braunfels. My ears are going now too, not just my eyes. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. This evening I'm going to go over just a little bit more in detail what the Prescription Assistance Program does, since we have several new council members.
Please.
And do that. The program was actually started in January of 2000, so it's actually been in operation for a little over 17 years. Primary purpose of the Prescription Assistance Program is to help people that do not have prescription coverage and are low income. And what we consider, and the drug companies that we get our medications from as low income, is about 250% of the federal poverty level, which for a family of two or a household of two is somewhere just over $40,000 a year. So that's kind of the average. Some drug manufacturers, if the medication is very expensive, like for treating for hepatitis C or some of the autoimmune diseases, may actually allow up to a little over $100,000 a year, because we're talking about some medications. One lady in particular we're dealing with right now, her treatment per month, just in 4 days, is $80,000. So she's kind of in that ballpark. We can actually get the medication, and the manufacturer gives it to us. So where the hospital would be out that over 6 months, $480,000, they actually are not out anything at that point. So it's a big savings just in that one particular drug. We actually have two ways we get our medications for patients. You see on TV a lot, AstraZeneca is a good example of this when they're advertising for Advair is a good example. If you can't afford your medication, AstraZeneca can help. So there's forms to fill out, and you have to send in your income documentation for each patient to show what their income level is, several forms to get the doctors to sign, and we send that in to the manufacturers, and they send us 3 months' supply of medication. So that medication actually costs the hospital $0 for the medication. And most of the drug companies actually provide some medication, but it's usually what they are still providing that they have a patent on. Stuff that's been out for a long time, like Lasix and Aldactone, a lot of drugs have been out about as long as I've been a pharmacist. You just have to pay cash for it, basically. So we have another program that we can use to get those medications, and it's extremely complicated when dealing with federal government. So, but it's called 340B, where we can actually buy medications at about 40% on the dollar, and use these medications to help patients that can't afford them. Usually I spend somewhere around, this month's going to be around $5,000 probably buying these medications. But most of them are the generics that, are fairly inexpensive and can be provided. But then there's some exceptions to it. One particular drug you may have heard of for treating methicillin-resistant staph or staph infections is a tablet form of it, and it's usually about a 10-day therapy, something like that. One bottle of 20 tablets runs probably $6,000 or $7,000. But through this 340B program, I can buy that same bottle of tablets for 20 cents. So we can actually treat the patient, at a very low cost and get them over their infection for 20 cents versus if they had to go out and buy it and pay them $4,000 and $5,000 for it, it just wouldn't happen. They would still have the infection, probably come back to the hospital at that point. So this program really benefits a lot of patients in that regard. There's some, like I say, since it's with the federal government, there's some criteria we have to kind of dance through, and 3 things the patients have to meet. They actually have to be a patient of Guadalupe Regional Medical Center, either, have visited a hospital, or they have to be a patient of one of the doctors that is actually on salary at the hospital. And we have a group of physicians at the hospital in a program called Guadalupe Regional Medical Group. And they're actually paid a salary instead of running their own offices and making, money that way. So they may be paid a couple $100,000 a year, but the nice benefit for these doctors is that they've got their own office staff they don't have to pay for. Everybody does their medical billing for them, coding and so forth. They get there at 9 in the morning, 8 in the morning, and they go home at 5 o'clock, and there's no phone calls at night. So pretty good deal for them, and a lot of the doctors are opting for that these days. So the physicians that are in this group, we can actually use a 340B program for. So we do have a lot of options as far as providers go for that. Some of the services we provide through prescription assistance, all the patients get a 1-month supply of medication, of one particular type of medication. And we treat a lot of chronic diseases, and probably the biggest one we treat that causes more problems than anything else is diabetes. Because if you get diabetes, you may start having cardiac problems, renal failure, at some point liver failure, just a cascading type of disease. And we have a few patients that, come in and they get 1 or 2 medications per month and, not very many. I've got patients that have as many as 20 or a little over 20 per month they're getting. And it's kind of hard for me to figure out sometimes what they do all day. I think they just take tablets and injections all day. Have to schedule them. So not a good life to have at that point. But we are able to provide them with the medications they need to have some fairly good quality of life at that point. Being a pharmacist and being on staff there, we counsel patients on their new prescriptions, tell them what they're for, what the side effects may be, take them with food, a few of them, fair skin population. Some of them are really photosensitive. They can go outside with them and be sunburned just like that, so we have to tell them about precautions like that and so forth. I also participate in monthly diabetes classes to actually go in with a group of people that are there for diabetes education, and basically it's just kind of an open forum to, if they have questions about something, I can answer them or find out the information. Some tidbits on things that are pertinent to diabetes, I can inform them of and help them out with that. And that's always been a very helpful, enlightening thing for me. I'm sorry. One of the other things we supply is diabetic testing medication or devices. Test the blood sugar with, so they can kind of see what their blood sugar is. There's kind of a misunderstanding with that in the general public is you see a lot of meters given away for free, and anybody will give you a meter. It's buying those strips. It's the problem. And they can go up to $1 a piece. Some of them you can get now for probably 25 cents a piece, something like that, but they're still very expensive if you use a lot of them. We also have a program where if a patient is hospitalized and they are uninsured, don't have prescription coverage, and they're getting treatment for like cancer or some autoimmune diseases, we can actually find medication from the drug companies to replace it to the hospital so the hospital is not out the cost of the medication. This past year, it was around $220,000 we replaced to the hospital. This coming year, it looks like it may be around $500,000. And it just depends upon the medication and the patient at that time as to how much that might be. We also assist with patients that are in the emergency room. If they don't have a lot of income, don't have prescription coverage, we'll actually fill their prescriptions there in our pharmacy for them and help them get out and get on the way. A lot of them, it's acute care type stuff where it's antibiotics or, ibuprofen, something like that, that's fairly mild pain medication. And also the last thing we do that's pretty good for patients is that when a patient is discharged from the hospital and they have a handful of prescriptions, a lot of times they can't afford those either. So we actually give them the first 30 days out of our program, gives them an opportunity to find a physician if they don't have one, get signed up for the county indigent program, which helps them with their labs and so forth, and gives them time to find a physician, get all this in place, and come back to us with written prescriptions that we can get them on the program and go forward at that time. The cost to the patient is only $15 a month. So we may be dispensing several $1,000s to someone, and they're paying us $15 a month. And we do have folks that can't pay us $15 a month, so we do have funds to help alleviate that sometimes in that situation. We never turn anybody away. Just a few numbers over the 17 years. We've actually helped 5,600 patients in that 17 years. Prescriptions filled are about 200,000 we've done in that period of time. The retail value of what we've dispensed is $60,500,000 in 17 years. And currently we have about 882 active patients participating in our program. In our staff, we've got 4 people. I'm the pharmacist that's there. I have a certified pharmacy technician that works with me. And then we have 2 office assistants that actually take care of all the paperwork involved in dealing with the drug companies and other programs we have at that time. Does anybody have any questions?
Probably, since we have some new members here
Yes.
that haven't been exposed to this program before. But questions, gentlemen? Anyone down here? Cedric?
I'll just make a couple of statements to you, Mr. Riggs. The numbers that you're throwing out they're staggering. I mean, when you talk about the cost of the medications. Mm-hmm. So I'll say kudos to you, your staff, and what you guys have done. It is true that we need some type of healthcare reform in this country. And maybe you guys are on to something here that is much more than we even thought of. I just want to tell you, not many people walk around with wings on, and what you're doing for some of these people, especially the indigent people, it is truly remarkable.
Thank you.
And I just want to thank you for that.
One thing
It does
I'd
not
like
go unnoticed.
Okay, thank you. One thing I'd like to say is the PEP program at Guadalupe Regional is one of only a handful I know of in the state, which is kind of unusual because the other benefit to the hospital, if you kind of want to look at it a little bit differently, is that as long as these patients are getting their medication and being treated for their disease, they're not coming back in the hospital in the emergency room and being treated at no cost. So it saves the hospital a lot of money. Our program costs the hospital, I think it's on some of your paperwork there, but about $380,000 a year. And, 1 or 2 ICU visits, you can eat that up in a hurry. So it's well worth it. I don't understand, like you were saying, why other hospitals don't have programs like this to alleviate some of the cost and help their patients. But just a question.
Mr. Gutierrez?
Do you offer any type of education prevention program like for diabetes?
We do. We actually have a nurse on the staff at the hospital that does diabetic education, and she has a 6-week program that just, once she finishes one 6-week program, she starts another one. And it goes over, like I say, I do the medication part of it. There's a physical therapist that comes in that talks about activity and so forth. The dietitian that comes in talks about, what to eat, what's correct and what's not. So there's a lot of information given out at that program that really helps.
Thank you.
Once again, thank you for what folks may not know too is we pay a small amount of money into this program, and the dollar benefit back to people who live in this city, it's exponential compared to what we contribute. It's huge. It makes a big difference right here in this city. So part of that 17 years, $60 million, a lot of it has come right back here to Schertz. So, Dr. Briggs, thank you very much, as always. I appreciate the update and look forward to seeing you again next quarter.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. All right, next on the agenda this evening, we have our quarterly financial report. Mr. Walters.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Okay, tonight I'm going to walk you through our quarterly financial report. To my knowledge, this is the first time staff has done a financial presentation other than the annual CAFR report. And from going forward, we'll be submitting these reports to council quarterly in compliance with our charter. So what I have for you here is our financial report as we look at it through the city. It's basically a revenue and expense report, and it shows the cash and investments and a couple of charts to show performance year over year. It goes through all the major operational funds and every area of where we actually take in money, whether it be property taxes, water and sewer, drainage, or even more specialized like capital recovery, or the hotel occupancy taxes in there, and the library boards even in here. Going through, it's separated in different columns, so I'll go through the different areas of the report itself. We have a description of the line or the account segment on the left-hand side. We have the current budget listed, the current period, which will be the monthly total. So this is the monthly activity for December 31st. We have a prior year-to-date actual. So use this as a comparison between December this year and December last year. We have our year-to-date actual, which is the first quarter of how much we've either spent or brought in. Year-to-date encumbrance. This is a PO that has been authorized, but we have not paid it yet. We haven't not cut a check. So if you look at that, it's an expenditure to be, if you will. And then the budget balance is how much we have left in that account to be either taken in through revenue or expensed through one of our operations. The budget balance takes into account the current budget, the actual, and the encumbrance section as well. So we expect those to be filled in an actual expense. And then the percentage of the budget that is that has been used up. One of the areas that I'll go over, so we're at the 25% mark of the budget. If you think that all the expenses and revenues come in equally throughout the year, then all of the budget balances should be around 25%. That's not always the case in all the different areas. So our property taxes, we get a bunch in the December-January timeframe. Almost all of it, 90%, will come in during this time. They're due at the end of January, so we get some that prepay starting around December, which is why you see about a 43%, even though we're only 25% done. We have the revenues broken out into all the different categories, and we're performing about where we expect on all of them. Right below that, we have an expenditure summary. So we break out each city division in the general fund and other funds and show the different categories, expenditure categories that we assign to each. The first one here is city council, so the personnel, supplies, city support, operations, staff support, which is the training and travel, memberships, and then the equipment, whether it's an operating equipment item, would be for this one. Over here on the side, you see the percent remaining in the budget. And it goes through that for all the major divisions in the city. So we have the city manager, the municipal court. We have the customer relations, or 311. We have planning and zoning is coming about 25%. Our legals right now pretty low. We have some outstanding invoices. General services, that one has been closed down and is combined with the facility service department and the internal service section. The city secretary coming in 25%. Our non-departmental, which is sort of our citywide expenses, not really defined to any single department. Our public affairs coming in around 27%. Records management 25%. Schertz magazine 25%. Engineering at 20%. GIS at about 26%. And below that, we have each of the classifications of expenditures broken out into categories. So the first one was general government. So those were all the divisions in the general government. So you can see how that entire section is performing overall compared to the 25% budget. The general government sitting around 22%. For most of the expenditures, they do come in much more consistently. We have regular payrolls and regular operating supplies we need to purchase throughout the year. So you'll see those, for the most part, will be much more centered and in line with the 25%. Whereas the revenue, we get a bunch in the beginning, and then we put more of that into the investments as we get it in. As the outer years, we start taking money out of our investments to fund the rest of our operations. Our PD, they have a lot of capital outlay, which they put in the order for all their new squad cars, so that's why they're a little bit higher than the 25%. They're at the 29%. You see the order has been placed, so the squad cars are in the encumbrance, which means we've cut the PO, we've placed the order, we just haven't cut the check yet. We haven't gotten the final invoice.
James, can I ask one question?
Sure.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Please.
Rental, leasing, 46,000. What is that for? It's just one item.
We do lease some police vehicles now, so those are some vehicles that we put on a replacement program.
Thank you. I just didn't see it go across. Thank you.
Oh, yes. Okay. Fire rescue seeing about 27%. Inspections, 30% due to some of the higher inspections related, or outside inspectors we bring in during high periods of plans and reviews coming through. You'll notice if you look back at the beginning, the permit revenue is also at about 40% of the budget, so those revenue and expense can correspond. And the marshals at 29%. So overall public safety is 28%. And they do have a large capital expenditure, which is a one-time. So I was saying for the majority of them, like personnel, they should be fairly even across, but there are some with higher pieces. And so you kind of get the idea of how to kind of go through and read it. So let me skip forward a little bit. Streets coming on target, parks is there. The senior center has been merged with back down below in the city assistance section. Library is coming at 25, animal services 28. The internal services section is sitting just at the 25% mark as well. So majority of them are coming through. The city assistance coming in about the 27. That includes the YMCA, the senior center, and then court restricted, which is our technology, and those are restricted funds. So overall, we've had the $29.5 million budget. We've spent $6.3 million in checks. We have another $1.2 million outstanding in purchase orders that yet to be paid. Our budget overall is sitting at 25.67, which is very much in line with our first quarter. As I mentioned before, we bring a lot of money up in the beginning, and then we spend more out in the back. So right now our year to date's at $3.9 million of revenues over expenditures. As the year goes on, we stop getting that big property taxes in, and that gap will start to close until we get to the end of the year. Some of the other areas, it breaks down, if you want to go into more detail, it breaks down the property taxes to even more detail. all the revenues into more detail. So each account you can see, rather than just the overall summary. You'll see the property taxes ad valorem current are sitting at 55%. We had the delinquent property tax, which was a reversal of that the tax assessor collector did. So that one's actually the opposite right now, but we've made that back up. It was a correction on their side. Just the different fees. Fees is a big one. The court comes in on top. They're about 20% out of 25. But we go through every different sort of fee and category in here, and try to be pretty transparent on this one. One thing to note is our investment income. If you notice that the state, or not the federal government has been, Federal Reserve, sorry, has been raising the Federal Reserve rate. We're about up to the 1% range. So even our investment pools, which we keep a lot of our money, it's very liquid, goes in and out. It's basically a money market mutual fund. Back right after the recession, we were earning as low as 0.08%. Now we're back up to about 1%. So we're earning almost 10 times what we were back a few years ago. That being said, back before the recession, in 2007, you could see 4.8% in the pools. So we're still not there, but it is worth noting that is starting to come back. Then we have a cash and investment section, so you see the pool cash. We just have one bank account overall, and then each operational fund lays claim to it. And then we have all the different investments that we lie out per fund. So the general fund was sitting on $14.4 million in cash. This does include the property tax we started getting in December, which is one of our big spikes. We actually have a graph to show that. So our ad valorem tax, this is how it goes throughout the year. We have October and November are fairly low. December, we get a spike after the bills go out around October, November. People start paying then. They're actually not due until January. You'll see those come back down. And then we get some stragglers, which slightly late payments. So we get all our money here, and then we put those investments and then pay it out over the time period. Sales tax has been pretty good so far this year, 19.9, 1.9, and 9.5% over last year. We have in January, February, when we see those, we'll see those come back down a little bit, but we're still positive overall, and we're tracking within our budget estimate. Usually when you have this large number, it's usually there was an adjustment that the state comptroller did, usually an audit report. Somebody's getting property taxes, or sorry, sales taxes. They're attributing it to maybe Selma, but it was really Schertz. Or it could go the other way. We were getting it, but it belongs to somebody else. So comptroller investigates claims that way, and if they find that it to be true, they misallocated, then they'll do an adjustment and withdraw money from us and give it back on the next payment. So we'll withhold some of the cash. And we have very little control over it, mostly due to the confidentiality. They're private companies. We can't get into their financials and make public claims and all this stuff. So if we think there's a concern, we can raise it with the comptroller, and they do an independent review and adjust the books how they come out. And then CPS, one of our larger franchise agreements, we get these quarterly. Our November one was the highest. You can see each year we've been getting higher and higher as we add residents and as they adjust their model, their fee model. Okay. Zoom out a little bit. Jump down to water and sewer is another one of our large funds. Revenues budget is 20.5. Year-to-date actual is 5.7. They're coming in a little bit over the 25%. They're much more flat, but actually they get a lot of more revenue usually in the summer months when you have to water more. Nobody waters in the winter and fall. So we have more of a consumption change in the summer. So this is a fairly good standing for being so early in the year. It's split into three main categories as far as the expenses. We have the business office, which is the utility billing. They're coming at 20.25%. And the water and sewer administration, which is the servicemen when they go out, and the other director positions. They're at 26.5. We also have some projects. of $845,000 that was approved in the budget, and we have not moved those projects forward yet. All right. And they're sitting at $5.4 million in cash and investments. I'll go back to this one. And the water and sewer over under right now is $956,000 that they're currently up. Once we get through the projects and start seeing that come in, you'll see that drop a little bit. EMS is sitting at, well, missed that one. I'll have to come back. I have an updated EMS section for you, actually. So we do not have some of the revenue in there. Drainage is coming at 25% as far as the revenue. Their expense category is coming in at 22.2. They're 44,000 up for the year so far. Hotel occupancy tax is $202,000 currently brought in and 59,000 out, so they're up 43,000. We do have a track to show where they're trending. They're very close, so they have a very cyclical, and without them changing their dollar amounts and without adding a new hotel, we're about sort of at the capacity of what they can allow, what they can give us. The park funds brought in $90,000, only spent $4,000 so far, so we have $92,000 out for the park fund. Tree and mitigation has brought in $54,000 so far this year. $36,000 expenditures, they're up $17,000. Capital recovery water, they brought in $270,000. We didn't have any projects located or allocated for this current year. Capital recovery sewer, they brought in $97,000. We spent $2,000, so they're up $95,000. We do have a small project for the that'll coming up for this year. The tax INS, they brought in $3.4 million. That's a property tax base, so they get majority of their revenue up front, and they have an expenditure category that's more unique. So they actually have 2 times during the year we pay our bonds and our debt, one in February, March timeframe, and again in August, September timeframe. So we'll see those come through at 2 times. And the EDC Corporation had $1 million in revenue so far, $145 in expenses. They're up $880,000. They do have the city assistance, which is their pre-approved amount for one-time abatements or incentives. That if a project comes along and they need to do a quick incentive, they have that ability. And they have the same sales tax chart. All right, so that's sort of how you go through the financial report, the different sections on how to, different categories and different numbers we show. At this point, is there any questions or
Questions for Mr. Walters? It appears there are none. Given that there aren't any questions,
All right.
continue.
Thank you, sir.
Anything further?
No, sorry. This is all I have for you tonight as far as the financial statements are concerned.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Excellent work. If you do have any questions, obviously, get back with Mr. Walters. He knows all. He knows where every dollar is.
Please feel free to send me questions you may have after you look through it further. We'll have a updated copy for you guys with that correction by tomorrow, so you can look
Very
at
good.
that and have it.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. All right, next up, we have a presentation and update from Samco regarding upcoming bond issuances. Mr. McCliney, gentlemen.
Mayor,
Good evening.
Council, my name is Mark McCliney with Samco Capital Markets. My partner Andrew Friedman with Samco Capital Markets, and Devin Whitlock, a new associate with us. We work with the city whenever they borrow money, assist them getting out to market. Over the past couple of weeks, we've been preparing for a presentation or the summer issuance that have been planned, and your staff wanted us to brief you all before taking any legal steps on moving forward, particularly with the new council members. Before Andrew goes through this presentation, I want to go just very briefly. The city has the second highest possible rating by Standard & Poor's. You're AA plus. Your finances are remarkably strong. For the past, I'm going to say 10 years, every year has been an improvement. The presentation that James just made is going to be a new presentation. That's going to be something we will be giving to Standard & Poor's also. Those are the questions they come. They want to say, what does the staff present to council? And those numbers, not the actual results, but what you're getting is what they want you as a council to get. Your staff, your reputation out in the market, everything about Schertz is top drawer. You are and have been this way for many, many years. As I say, each year you are getting stronger. And that's the track you obviously want to be on. So Andrew's going to go through a presentation on general obligation bonds and certificates of obligation, which is planned for an issuance later on. But we want to go over this as an overview to get you all started. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Please.
Good evening. As Mark mentioned, I've got a presentation here that I'd like to go through with you. Hopefully it'll be informative, especially for new council members, in terms of the long-term debt options that are available to cities. And I'll just jump right in. Behind tab 1, we've got the different types of borrowing options. And I've got the top 2 highlighted. They're what we're going to go over this evening. There are general obligation bonds, which of course require a bond election, and certificates of obligation that function the exact same way as general obligation bonds in terms of the maturity, the way that they're issued, the interest rates you receive, the method of repayment, but the legal authority to issue between the two are different. Also, you'll see revenue bonds, sales tax revenue bonds, and tax notes. We're not going to get into that this evening. They just happen to be the other alternatives for the city or available to the city that we typically do not exercise, so we're not going to go through that this evening. Behind the next page, general obligation bonds. As I think all of you know, general obligation bonds can only be issued after the city holds a successful bond election. Elections are held on uniform dates in May and November of each year. The voter education is a big component of what goes into successful bond elections, getting out what the projects are for, meeting with the community. In the bond election order that is called, ordinance that's called, you would outline the projects that you're looking to fund through this bond election, either in a single proposition, or if there are multiple projects going on, it might be multiple propositions where you would outline the projects and also the par amount, the borrowing amount for each of those projects. The general obligation bonds are going to carry your lowest cost of funds between different borrowing alternatives, whether they be revenue bonds, GO bonds. They're sold based on your underlying credit rating, which is Mark mentioned. We hold a AA plus. So when we, the city of Schertz, go to market, we are assured that among cities, especially of our size, but with our name recognition, we're going to get the best interest rates available in the market, whenever that may be. Interest rates obviously fluctuate day over day, month over month, year over year. We've been in historically low interest rate environment for many years now. We're still have very attractive interest rates, although, as Mr. Walters mentioned moments ago, we're starting to see interest rates trend upward. Again, still very attractive interest rates. If we sold today, they wouldn't be as low as the bonds that we sold in September of this past year, maybe 50 basis points higher. But again, those bonds were issued the absolute lowest that the city of Schertz has ever borrowed or refinanced its outstanding debt. When we hold a bond election, and let's say it was held in May, you have to canvass that election for 30 days before you could then put together an offering document, go to market, lock in your interest rates. After you've locked in interest rates and you, the council, have an opportunity to vote on those bonds, And when you do vote on those bonds, you know all of the facts surrounding the bond sale, what the final interest rate is, what the payback and the maturity amounts of those bonds are, as well as the expected financial impact of that borrowing. Only then do you as a council obligate yourselves and sell the bonds in the market. 30 days after that successful bond sale, you would then receive funds to your bank account. And that issuance process goes the same for certificates of obligation as well. If you flip the page to certificates of obligation, what separates certificates of obligation from general obligation bonds is the mechanism by which they're issued. Certificates of obligation are not subject to voter approval. They have a different mechanism whereby you post a notice of intention resolution, and that's one of the things we're going to discuss after this. A notice of intention resolution is a resolution adopted by you, the city council, roughly a month and a half, 2 months before you would ever sell certificates of obligation, where you notify the public of the projects that you're looking to finance with certificates of obligation, as well as a not to exceed amount, the borrowing amount. You're saying that we're not going to borrow more than $5.6 million for these projects. We expect to take action, final action, selling these certificates of obligation on this date. That notice of intention by law has to be published in your paper of record here in the city of Schertz for 2 consecutive weeks. And that serves to get out the word and to notify the constituents of the city's intention to issue these certificates of obligation. The citizens then have the right of petition. And if a petition is circulated and 5% of the registered voters in the city sign that petition, then that would then force the certificates of obligation issuance. Wouldn't be able to issue. It would then go to a bond election where it would be put in front of the voters for their approval. And it's worth mentioning the legislature has changed in the last couple of years. If you hold a bond election and the proposition fails, you cannot then turn around and issue certificates of obligation. You're barred from doing so for 3 years. So that's something to keep in mind, something that's changed, and wanted to make you aware of. So after you make that publication in the paper, 30 days after that, the city would be eligible to sell their certificates of obligation. 30 days after that successful sale, assuming it is so, you'd be able to close and put the funds in your bank. Both a certificate of obligation and general obligation bond would be secured by your ad valorem taxes. Certificates of obligation on top of that, because you might be funding utility system improvements or other projects that could be funded from different enterprises of the city, could be paid back from those different enterprises. It's known as a double barrel pledge, where you're pledging taxes. You don't necessarily have to use taxes if they're for utility system improvements, for instance, but it gives you that option. General obligation bonds, on the other hand, can only be repaid with your INS tax levy. Wanted to give just a brief overview of the financing team that's involved with debt issuance. You have the issuer, your staff, your director of finance, Mr. Walters here, Mr. Kessel, Mr. James, and a host of employees and staff members that are involved in the financing process, whether it's getting together for a rating call with Standard & Poor's, where the city is asked a number of questions on that rating call for the rating agency to be able to determine not only the financial health of the city, which they glean, of course, from your audit, but also different practices that are in place, how staff keeps you as a council abreast of what's going on so that you can properly govern as you're set forth to do. There's that process. You also have financial advisor, which is what me and Mark McCliney do for you at Samco Capital Markets. We help to oversee the process, putting together the offering document on behalf of the city that's then used to market to the investing community across the country. We help to coordinate the rating calls, work with the different attorneys on the entire process. You have bond counsel, which is a specialized attorney that offers a tax-exempt opinion when we're issuing tax-exempt bonds that investors rely upon to know that when they buy your tax-exempt obligations, that they will in fact not have to pay taxes on the interest they receive when they invest in the city of Schertz. We have underwriters and bond purchasers. They're the folks out there that are buying the bonds from the city, turning around and selling them to different insurance companies, individual investors, and whoever else might be interested in buying the city of Schertz's debt. The rating agencies, of course, we've gone through their Standard & Poor's, Fitch Ratings, and Moody's Investor Service, who are the three big rating agencies. We have ratings with all three. AA plus is the highest that we enjoy with Standard & Poor's, and that's who we would be going to on future debt issuances so that we can ensure that we're getting the lowest interest rate by utilizing our highest credit rating. That last item, bond insurance companies, because we have such a high credit rating, again at that AA plus, we don't have to buy bond insurance, and bond insurance is a policy that cities, schools, municipal utility districts utilize where they get to sell their bonds, sell their debt based on the credit rating of an insurance company that you pay a premium up front to in order to utilize their AA credit rating. We have a higher credit rating than any of those bond insurers, so that's a fee that we're able to not pay when we go to market, which again helps to generate the lowest borrowing cost that we're able to lock in. Lastly, in this section, the different sale methods of long-term debt. There's a negotiated underwriting where the city sets out and names an underwriting firm, a broker-dealer, that they want to underwrite the bond issue, and we would work with them. They would work with their customers in order to price and then sell your bonds. What we have used over the last few years and had great success with, and by that I mean able to lock in lower interest rates than via a negotiated bond sale, is a competitive bond sale, and that's where we put a notice of sale out to the entire investment community. And broker-dealers have an opportunity to submit their best bid. And what we've seen is different investment firms, broker-dealers throughout the country that might not have much of a presence in Texas, but because Texas has been so healthy compared to a lot of states around the country, they're in the market. They help drive down the interest that we pay by kind of jumping over each other to try and get their hands on our very good credit rating. And so we have been utilizing the competitive bid method over the last few years because it's been between 5 and 10 basis points better than you might expect to get in a negotiated underwriting. Lastly, there's a private placement. Again, we typically don't do that on debt where you're going out 20 years. Private placements where a local bank, such as a Frost Bank here in town or Broadway Bank, or local banks here in Schertz might buy a debt issuance. At 20 years, it's not something that we would promote and that many banks have an appetite for, but it's something that you might pursue when you do a 7-year tax note. But we could more on that at a different time. Lastly, wanted to talk about issuing bonds on a bank qualified basis versus a non-bank qualified basis. Banks, when they buy your debt, they don't get the full benefit of your tax exempt interest, but if you as a city decide and covenant to them that you're not going to issue more than $10 million in debt or enter into leases greater than $10 million in a year, we can issue on a bank qualified basis. And what that does is it opens up the pool of investors who are buying municipal bonds to include these banks who will now get a certain amount of that tax exempt income from investing in the bonds. Drives the interest rates down anywhere between 35 and 50 basis points than if we issue non-bank qualified tax exempt debt. And so whenever possible, we work with staff as we're putting together these long-term financing plans to determine if we can issue on a bank qualified basis. If the city doesn't need more than $10 million in a given year, we always try to structure our debt to try and stay under that $10 million because it brings down the total interest cost of our borrowing substantially, 35 basis points to 50 basis points on a $10 million borrowing is substantial. And so that's what we'll talk about here in a moment. One of the things we've done for this year is set it up such that we can issue bank qualified debt and take advantage of those better interest rates. Behind tab 2, I just wanted to show you just a simple table of what the credit ratings actually look like. You have Moody's, Standard & Poor's, and Fitch. I've bolded where our ratings stand with each of the 3 rating agencies, and then you can see this is all the ratings that are considered investment grade, and it goes all the way down to Baa3, triple B minus. So you can see we're right there at the top. AAA is, of course, the best. Then you get to AA plus. So just wanted to have that visual for you. Lastly, behind tab 3, we have the timetable for issuance that we've proposed and worked with staff to put together. That's germane to our future debt issuance that we're going to start discussing next week. You'll see at the top, we're considering $5.6 million. You are considering $5.6 million of certificates of obligation and $4 million of general obligation bonds that will be coming from your voted authorization from your 2015 bond election. This would start the legal process, not tonight, but next Tuesday with that notice of intention resolution. And so next Tuesday, you would have that notice of intention resolution before you that is going to notify the citizens that we're looking to borrow up to $5.6 million, not a dollar more than that. It can be less, but it can be no more than that for the specific projects that will be set forth and outlined in that notice. You'll see below that in bold on April 12th, we're planning, should you take affirmative action on that on April 12th, we'll post that notice of intention in the paper. It'll get published again on April 19th. During that same time, we'll be working with your bond attorney and staff to put together the offering document. The offering document outlines the repayment schedule and different terms of the bonds that the investors will be looking at. We'll go through a credit rating at that time, and then we will receive bids on May 23rd at 11 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. for the certificates of obligation and the bonds. We'll bring the final results to you all on May 23rd, and that'll be your opportunity to see the results and decide if they merit action, and if so, that will be when you lock in and formally sell either the COs and or the bonds at that time. Up until May 23rd, the city is not obligated to issue. Certainly, the city, we want, in the investment community, we have such a sterling reputation because when we go to market, we are serious and we don't pull deals. We don't. Investors know that when we're going to market, we're doing so as a unified group. And so if you take action on May 23rd, that would have closing and the funds delivered to the city's depository bank on June 20th. A lot of information. I'm happy to go back in more depth, answer any questions you have, and certainly as this sinks in over the next week, we can certainly answer more questions then when we're back next Tuesday.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Council, questions for Andrew? Doesn't appear there are any questions, so I guess we'll see you next week as we kick off the process.
Fantastic.
Very good. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Next item on the agenda this evening, we have hearing of residents. We have 2 folks that have signed up this evening, and we'll start with Maggie Titterington. Maggie.
Good evening, Council. I wanted to start off by saying thank you to Mayor Pro Tem Edwards and Councilmans Davis and Gutierrez for coming out and supporting the Hampton Inn grand reopening. That was $2 million well spent. It was a great event, and just really appreciated the support, and as did the general managers and the people that came in from out of town with Hilton. Also wanted to give a shout out to Eddie, and I believe he's with Public Works. Schertz Funeral Home has been experiencing some issues with their gas lines being cut 3 times now, accidentally during the course of construction. And so you can imagine if they're in the middle of a cremation and they get the gas lines cut, then everything stops. So Eddie and as I said, I believe it is with Public Works, they have been working to kind of resolve the issues and find out and work, there's contractors in Cibolo, but anyways, it's been about a 2-week process, but just thank you so much, Eddie. And last, thanks for Simmons Real Estate Company. They are a go. They got the approval for their sign. Planning and Zoning has approved. They're going to start doing the the grading and stuff, so the building is finally going up. I am so thrilled about that. You cannot even imagine. And also, before I have a check from the Taste, from our judges who did some contributions. I just wanted to state again, as I had said the last time we had met, is I would really like this city council to seriously think about doing an incentive program for small businesses. I checked out some of our neighboring cities. Universal City has a storefront improvement program. Live Oak has a visual improvement program. City of Cibolo has 10 different types of different programs depending on the business and what they're looking for. Selma, Johnny Casillas and his staff, they don't have an EDC per se, but he does work with small businesses and large businesses for abatements. And again, I know they're not primary jobs, and I know the EDC can't do anything, and that's why I'm appealing to City Council, because I do know that through general funds something could be proposed, something could happen. And as I was saying, I just think the quality of life businesses that are part of our city really give our city that flavor, that taste, and an incentive for them would go such a long way. I mean, you could say $2,000, $3,000, and you're thinking, well, what is that really going to do? Well, that's half a payment for a pizza oven or a kiln or something that will increase their taxable base of what they're already producing for the city. So anyways, again, I would be more than willing to help head up a committee to delve more into it, to see what kind of requirements that would be fair and honest, but I would just ask that you all deeply consider that. And with that, if I could ask the Schertz Senior Center representatives to come up real fast. If I could have our mayor and Councilman Gutierrez and Ms. Dennis, if you could come up since you all were part of this. Our Taste of the Town, our judges felt that since they were getting free food, they wanted to contribute back to the community. And so together the judges raised $535 to contribute to nonprofits of our choice. And so the chamber chose one from each of the cities that were represented, Schertz, Cibolo, and Selma, and the Schertz Senior Center ended up getting drawn, and so their part of it is $178. And you, she has the real check. Thank you.
All right, we have one more person that signed up this evening. That's Anna Sanders. Please.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I just wanted to tag team here with the president of the chamber, and I'm a business owner. So my name is Anna Sanders, and I own Color Clay Studio. And I just wanted to kind of illustrate a little bit what this would do to a business like my business. We are a paint-your-own pottery studio. So people with families, no kids, or even single people come in, they choose something to paint, and they have fun. They sit down, have something to drink, paint something fun, and leave with us for us to glaze and fire. And the glazing process takes about a week because we only have one kiln. A kiln costs about $5,000 to $6,000, and we just can't afford that right now. So our business model is so much fun and so good that we are attracting people from San Antonio, and they have other pottery places in San Antonio. But we don't charge studio fees. Our prices are low, and they have fun with us. So they're coming from other towns, all the way from New Braunfels, even Austin, San Antonio. They come to see us. The problem is that we cannot turn around fast enough. So the whole process takes about a week because we only have a kiln, and we're always back down, just backing up. So with something like that, we could turn around faster, and we could get even more business to come to the city. And with that, I could hire more people. So not only more revenue, I would also be able to offer more jobs just right here in Schertz. So thank you for hearing.
Very good. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Edwards?
Mr. Mayor and Council, I hope you guys would just indulge me for a minute. I see us that we're doing historical preservation down in the Aviation Heights area. We're basically giving out money for homes to be preserved. We're talking about the economic development meeting with the council. Maybe at that meeting, could we have Kyle put together a packet or something similar and maybe invite Maggie to that meeting as well? Put together a packet to show us what the other cities are doing, some type of incentives for businesses. I understand the plight of small businesses, and I can certainly say I think that if we can certainly do it for a home to be refurbished, I think we can actually give money to these businesses who are paying for our EMS, our sales tax, that they're contributing to our community. I think that would be a great idea.
Very good. That kind of amounts to a request to have something on a future agenda, so we'll do so. Very good. All right, the next thing that we have on the agenda this evening is our consent agenda. We have item number 1, minutes, consideration, or action regarding the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of March 7, 2017. Ordinance 17C06, an ordinance by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Schertz, Chapter 18, Buildings and Building Regulations, Article 4, National Electrical Code, Section 18-81 Amendments, 210.52 Dwelling Unit Receptacle Outlets, Subsection D, Bathrooms. Item number 3, ratifying the resignations of Jim and Diana Webb from the Historical Preservation Committee. Those are the items on consent. Any of those that need to be pulled and considered individually? If not, is there a motion to approve the items on consent?
So move. Second.
A motion for Mr. Thompson, a second for Mr. Davis, I believe. Is that right? Sorry, I didn't look up quickly enough. Any other comments or questions from council? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
7 ayes and no nays, the motion carries. Discussion items, we begin with item number 4, Resolution 17R17, the CAFR fiscal year 2015-2016 resolution. Reads, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing the approval of the comprehensive annual financial report for fiscal year 2015-2016 and other matters in connection therewith. Good evening.
I'm Debbie Frazier. I'm from Armstrong, Vaughn & Associates, and we prepared your external audit this year. I realize a lot of you are new, but we do go through this pretty quickly and at the meeting because we've been through the audit with the city management team and then again with your audit committee last week. So I invite any of you to, especially you new folks who want to give me a call and go over the audit. I'd love to discuss it with you. It's not just a good sleeping tool. So we really, look forward to going over the audit with people. So, I want to point out that you did get an unmodified opinion. That means that your financial statements after adjustments are fairly stated and materially correct. I do want to note that there were 29 adjustments. 19 of them were PBC, which were provided by client, and then the remaining were provided by us. So if we could turn to the third page on this little thing. That's the letter. Again, these are just excerpts from the audit. I want to point out that the audit is divided into 3 areas. The first section is your management discussion area, and that's usually your transmittal letter and a management discussion that's provided by the city. Then the next section is the financial statements. The financial statements are broken into two parts: the statement of financial position and the statement of activities, and they're shown full accrual. So that means that you will see your debt, your fixed assets, your net pension liability, which is relatively new. And then in the modified accrual section, that's the way you budget. So there's two separate financial statements that you'll see within this audit. And then the third section is your statistical section that most of you might find probably the most interesting. It goes over 10 years of data from the CAFRs. And so, you know, if you just wanted to quickly look up something, property tax for the past 10 years, you'd be able to look that up in the back statistical section. Yep. I'd like you to look at the net position. The first two columns, those are your governmental activities, and those are made up of your general funds, or your governmental funds. So that encompasses your capital projects funds, your debt service funds, all your special revenue funds, and your general fund. So during the year, your total assets, which is actually the third number down, increased from $150.5 million to $170.7 million during the course of the year. And the increases resulted primarily from capital assets, which you increased almost $10 million, but also in your current assets, you increased cash about $12 million, and that was mainly due to your capital projects funds. The deferred outflows, this is pension related as well as amortization of your refunding bonds. You increased from $2.5 million last year to $3.9 million this year. Your total liabilities increased about $12 million, and most of that was long-term debt. Your total net position increased from $83.1 million to almost $93.6 million. And again, that was mainly due to your capital assets and your cash. If we can turn to the next page. This is your change in net position for governmental and business activities. Again, we're going to go over the two first columns, your governmental activities. I'd like you to notice that your total revenue went up approximately $2 million. $1 million of that was from property taxes, and then about $600,000 of it was from other taxes. So those other taxes are made up of franchise tax, sales tax, and bingo tax, which you received $1 this past year. But so your increase was about $2 million in the total revenues. Your total expenses increased about $2 million also, and those were made up of about $1.8 million increase was in your public safety area. So again, you increased your net position before transfers $10.4 million, and you had transfers of $29,000, increasing your change in net position to $10.5 million, ending your net position this year with $93.6 million. Next item that I'd like you to look at is your governmental funds. And this actually just flows across the page. You're just seeing your general capital project and debt service. But if you're looking at your actual audit, these kind of flip together. So you see all of your governmental funds side by side. And I'm going to point out that this is modified accrual. And unfortunately, you can't see the full screen, but your total governmental funds, and again, these don't include proprietary. They're on the modified accrual basis, but you brought in $35.7 million. You actually spent $39.1 million, so you reduced your net position by about $3.4 million before transfers and bond issues. You had bond issues of $10.7 million. You had a refunding bond of almost $4.2 million, and you paid that bond off with another $4.2 million. And then you had various transfers. So your other sources increased your revenue by 11.3. So overall, you had a 7.8 or almost 7.9 increase in your revenues or your net position. You went from 31.1 million to 39 million. The next page is a budget to actual just for your general fund. So your total revenues, you budgeted to bring in 23.6 million. You brought in almost 24 million, an increase of 389,988. If you look at the variance, you actually brought in 378,000 more in property tax than you budgeted. And that was the majority of the difference. Your permit fees were down slightly. I should point out, I said property tax, but it was all of your taxes. It was sales tax, property tax, and franchise. If you go down to your expenditures, just from the total general government, you expected to, or you budgeted 5.8 million, so you expected to spend 5.8 million. You actually spent 5.2 million, so you had a positive variance of 609,700. The majority of that were non-departmental expenses that didn't go through this past year. In your public safety department, you had almost 11.5 million budgeted to spend, and you spent 11.2 million, almost 11.3. You'll notice that you did have, in the police department, you had gone over budget about 14.2 thousand. However, that is really due to lack of turnover in your police department. So that's a positive thing because you usually budget to have some turnover, and so the salaries would go down. Public environment, your streets, you budgeted to spend almost 1.2 and you spent 1 million. You had a positive variance of about 113,000. Your parks and recreation, you budgeted to spend almost 1.4. You actually spent almost 1.3. So you had a positive variance of 116,540. Your budget to actual expenditures are also very close, which is always a good sign. I'm going to jump down to the total administration. So you budgeted to spend 2.1 million. You actually spent almost 1.8 million. So you had a positive variance there of almost 350,000. Your excess of revenues over expenditures was $2 million. You had actually only budgeted for 68,632. With your transfers in and out, you had a net change in fund balance of 1.8 million, increasing your ending fund balance to 11.4 million. The next item is the Economic Development Corporation. Your total revenues were 3.7 million during the year. You actually thought you would bring in 3.5, so you had a positive variance of 184,000. 141,000 of this was sales tax. Total expenditures, you plan to expend about 2.3 million, and you actually spent 770,000. And you'll see in the general government you had underspent about 933,000, and that was mainly incentives and abatements you had planned on giving out. So excess revenues over expenditures were 2.9 million. You had a transfer out of 536,000. Part of that was your last bond payment on one of the EDC's outstanding bond. So you increased your net change in fund balance to 2.4 million from 9.8 million to 12.2 million. In the water fund and the EMS, these are your proprietary. So these are always shown full accrual. There's no modified accrual. You always see your fixed assets, your debt, your net pension liability. The total current assets for both of them are 13.8 million at the end of the year, and you had non-current assets of 85.4. I'd like to point out that almost 13.5 million of that is restricted cash. So you ended the year with total assets of 99.1 million. And this may not seem like a big thing, but this year you actually ended, the Schertz EMS had cash and investments, and they also paid off their loan to the water sewer fund, or the water and sewer system that they had had outstanding for a couple years. The deferred outflows of resources, the deferred loss on refunding, that's just an amortization. When you take out a refunding bond, that refund loss has to be amortized over the life of the new bond. So that actually is $95,000, will be ending in about 6 years. Your deferred pension-related outflows, these are related to your net pension liability, and the majority of that number is basically prepaid contributions. Your liabilities, your total current liabilities for all of your enterprise funds are almost 4.7 for the end of the year. Your non-current liabilities, so this is debt, compensated absences, pension liability. They're almost 15.7 million. So your total liabilities were 20 million, and your total net position is almost 80 million. The operating revenue for these funds, you actually brought in between the two, almost 28 million. You spent close to 25 million, so your operating income increased by 3 million during the year. You had total non-operating expenditures that exceeded the expenses of 183,000. And then between transfers and capital contributions, and your capital contributions are sewer system that you may receive from a developer. That increased your net change in position from 6 million, or for 6 million, from 73.8 million up to 80 million. I just want to point out one of the notes in the audit. This is your TMRS note, so it's your net pension liability note. This is a fairly new note. This is the second year you've seen it. So some of the information, is comparative. One of the interesting numbers, in 2014, you had 502 total employees that were somehow involved in the system, active, receiving benefits, inactive, not receiving benefits, inactive employees. In 2015, you had 529. The interesting number, though, is the inactive employees or beneficiaries currently receiving benefits. That increased the most, from 67 to 79. The TMRS, net pension liability that's on the books, it's an estimate. So it's kind of a moving target, and TMRS values the liability annually, but it's December 31st of each year. So the estimate that you see in your financial statements is as of December 31st. They give you actuarial assumptions. You have inflation, overall payroll growth, and investment rate of returns. The investment rate of return is at 6.75. It's down 0.25% from what it was, or what actuarial assumption was used last year. The other item I'd like to point out on this particular, down a little, page a little more. Your net pension liability as a percentage, I'm sorry, that's not the number I wanted. The planned fiduciary net position as a percentage of total pension liability. So you have assets and a liability, and your percentage there is 70%. So you're basically 69.85% covered. Now the GFOA recommends that you have 70% covered. You're right on the cusp. It went down a little bit last year, But the reason it went down is because your net investment income really kind of just flew down in 2015. And we'll see a comparison back here, but before we go, I want to go down just a touch more. That net pension liability that you see at the bottom of the page, this is a discount rate, and they figured it at 6.75, but it could fluctuate up to 26.2 million, and it could fluctuate down to 8.9 million. So this is a moving target. It's an estimate. On that 69.8 that I pointed out before, that is an estimate. Your full rate that TMRS asks you to give each year did not go up very much during the course of the year, and that's important to note. They also don't want you to transfer money over to them. They want you to do it through that full retirement rate. So you can't, they don't want you to just arbitrarily send $1 million to help supply your, or supplement your pension. A few minutes ago, I talked about the fact that your net investment income really went down in 2015. They expect that they're going to have a 6.75% rate of return. You actually, in 2014, brought in $1.8 million, and you only brought in $53,000. And not you, TMRS. This is just your portion of TMRS's number. So at the end of the day, you had a total pension liability of $55.1 million. It went up, it only went up less than $1 million from $50.2 million last year. However, if you look down at your planned fiduciary net position ending balance, that went from $36.4 million to $38.4 million. This is, again, just a comparison of last year. If you go up just 2015, you put in $2,487,000. In 2016, again, that went up slightly to almost $2.6 million. I'd just like to point out, if we go down a little farther, the next section is our statistical section. And if we go down just a little bit more, could you go to the property tax? Thank you. These are he's going through the statistical section fairly quickly, but again, you can derive a lot of interesting information from this statistical section. I just want to go over the property tax section, which I probably should have put right behind the other stuff, so I apologize for that. Okay, right here. So I'd like you to just look at the property tax that you're bringing in 2016 is $15.1 million compared to 2007, which was almost $7.8 million. Your sales and use tax has gone up from $6 million to $10.9 million. Your franchise has gone from $1 million to $2.3 million. Your mixed beverage tax has not gone up much. Your bingo tax has kind of tanked, but you did receive $1 this year. Your hotel occupancy tax has doubled. It's gone from $259,000 up to $544,000. So again, in the statistical section, there's a lot of very, very good information. That's all I have. Do you have any questions?
Good, counsel. Questions for our auditor or Mr. Walters? I'm not seeing any questions or hearing anyone, so if that's the case, is there a motion to approve Resolution 17R17?
So move.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Thompson, a second from Dr. Kaiser. Anyone else comments or questions? Not, I'll call for a vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye. Aye.
7 ayes and no nays. The motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent work. We appreciate it. All right, next item that we have on the agenda this evening is item number 5, Resolution 17R19, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing the first quarter EMS debt revenue adjustments, utility billing debt revenue adjustments, and Schertz Magazine debt revenue adjustments for certain inactive outstanding receivables and other matters in connection therewith, or in short, write-offs. Walters.
Good evening again.
Good evening.
Tonight we bring you the first quarter of write-offs for this current fiscal year. Back in December, we came before council again to do that quarter. It wasn't quite at the quarter mark, but we've sticking to our plan to come back and do these each quarter. So this is the first one we've seen since December. And if you remember, write-offs are an accounting procedure used to more accurately reflect how much is likely to be collected in outstanding invoices, and our policies to write off any accounts with 180 days of non-payment. Key points: there is no change in available cash. These amounts are anticipated in the budget process as a bad debt expense, and just by writing these off does not excuse the debt or forgive them in any way. It is still owed, and we still can collect on them even after it's been written off. This is the example I showed last time. If we have $2 million in accounts receivable, we anticipate $800,000 not being collected. We show a net receivable of $1.2 million. After a write-off of $500,000, let's just say the accounts receivable shows at $1.5 million, the allowance shows $300,000, and the net receivable is still the $1.2 million. So we're just doing an accounting adjustment. For the EMS portion, again, they send initial bill sent to the patient. They have 30 days. They've and a phone call. They're 60 days late. And then they have a 90-day phone call. There's a 14-day collection notice, and they had 15,707 letters mailed. The average EMS bill is $1,400. They have a collection rate of 45 to 50%. This quarter, they had 498 accounts with this bad debt write-off, equals to $612,712.25 for the EMS portion. These are historic budget to actual, so we can get you the 15, 16 numbers now that we have those written off. And they're actually located in the CAFR that you just received. For the utility billing, their cycle is meter reading, then they invoice, and they process the payment. Sort of varies. They learn to collect they try to enforce timely payment by putting on late fees. If we still do not have payments, we do have the opportunity to turn off water and discontinue service. And then we have the utility deposits where if they leave, we still have that money in an account that we can net their final bill out against. So we can receive money that way. The utilities adjustment for this period as of February 28th is $8,426. This is very low considering we bring in almost $20 million in utility revenue each year. So they have a very good collection rate. The magazine, they have their invoicing and payment cycle just like everyone else. Their actual adjustment this quarter was $0. So I left this in here just to show that the magazine would not be writing off anything in this quarter.
Very nice.
Of course, our ongoing goal is to reduce write-offs and still provide a same or better customer service to our citizens. Are there any questions over this quarter's write-offs?
Council questions for Mr. Walters? Appears there are no questions. In that case, is there a motion to approve Resolution 17R19?
So move.
Second.
A motion from Mr. Thompson, a second from Dr. Kaiser. Any other comments or questions from council? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
7 ayes, no nays. The motion carries. Thank you. Item number 6, Resolution 17R20, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, or TCEQ, to accept a grant in the amount of up to $89,263.92. Chief?
Mayor, Council, thanks. This is a grant that come about back in August. Usually we try to come and get permission first to apply for a grant. This is one that they just kind of threw out there out of the blue. So we went for it, trying to get some hazmat equipment. Just found out we were awarded that grant. And it's got some big ticket items in there. Recently, I'd come and ask for permission to apply for another grant, and it had some of these items on there. Some of them are different. So just trying to make sure we get them either way. But the biggest items, the Hazmat Elite Chemical ID, it's $69,000, and it identifies up to 50,000 different chemical compounds and substances. So it'll be a nice addition for our hazmat team. And that's pretty much it. Just some other gas meters and level A suits and boots, just some general hazmat stuff.
What was our contribution to this? Did we have matching funds that we put up?
This is a no-match grant. So
No match. So it's $89,263.92 worth of equipment to the good.
yes, sir.
Wow. Just and we have to say yes and pass this resolution to take the money.
Mr. Mayor, with that being said, I make a motion that we approve Resolution 17R20.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Edwards and second from Mr. Davis. Any other comments or questions from council?
I have one comment.
Yes, sir.
Instead of us asking for permission to go after grants, why don't we just tell them to go hunt and bring it to us?
The only reason I can think of is that some grants require that they come before us and get permission in order to do it. Other than that, yeah, we go do it. Any other comments or questions from council? Chief, great work. Thank you very much. I'll call for a vote.
Aye.
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 7 ayes and no nays. The motion carries. Good stuff. Item number 7 is Ordinance 17T11, which is an ordinance by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing a budget adjustment to fund the Northcliffe water line replacement, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances conflict with this ordinance, and providing an effective date.
Good evening, Mayor,
Good evening.
Council, Mr. Kelsey. The first item I have tonight is an ordinance seeking authorization for a budget transfer of $372,980 that we'd like to transfer from our Water Reserve Fund to the Northcliffe Waterline Replacement Fund. In 2006, we started replacing the water lines out there in Northcliffe because of all the excessive breaks we had. The 15-16 budget, we budgeted $500,000 to do this final phase. We had Ford Engineering design this final phase in 2 phases to see how far the money could go. Total of it was like $730,000 for the contractor. So with this transfer, we can do both projects and finish this final phase. And if you look on the map here, the blue section is the sections that we've already done. The green and the yellow are the 2 phases that we'd like to get completed and finish up out there in Northcliffe.
Very good. Any questions from Mr. Hooks? Council?
It's funny, Mr. Kelsey just kind of mentioned something. Since I've been on council, we've been replacing water pipes out in that area, so it's good to see this come to completion.
This is the final phase of that back section, yes, sir.
Absolutely. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve ordinance number 17T11.
Second.
Motion from Mr. Edwards, second from Dr. Kaiser. Any other comments or questions from council? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote.
Aye.
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 7 ayes, no nays. Motion carries. Thank you, sir. Next item. Well, it looks like you have this one, too. Item number 8, Resolution 17R21, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing the dedication of one 30-foot utility easement along the Maskey Road drainage right-of-way to Guadalupe Valley Electric Cooperative for placement, maintenance, and repairs of a utility line by the city in accordance with the terms of the dedication agreement and other matters in connection therewith.
Yes, sir. If you see on the plan here, the yellow section, there's an existing power line easement that GVC already has, or power line that GVC already has. They were unable to locate the actual easement documents, so they're wanting to clean up this easement and have us dedicate an easement to them across our property.
Very good. Questions for Mr. Hooks, council? Is there a motion to approve Resolution 17R21?
So move.
A second.
Motion from Mr. Thompson, a second from Mr. Edwards. Any other comments or questions from council? Hearing none, I will call for a vote.
Aye.
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 Thank you.
7 ayes, no nays. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Hooks. And next item on the agenda is a roll call vote confirmation. Mrs. Dennis?
Consent agenda items 1 through 3. Motion was made by Councilmember Thompson, seconded by Councilmember Davis. Mayor Pro Tem Edwards, Council Members Davis, Gutierrez, Larson, Thompson, Kaiser, Crawford voted yes. No one voted no. Motion passed. Item number 4, resolution number 17R17. Motion was made by Councilmember Thompson, seconded by Councilmember Kaiser. Mayor Pro Tem Edwards, Council Members Davis, Gutierrez, Larson, Thompson, Kaiser, Crawford voted yes, no one voted no. Motion passed. Item number 5, resolution number 17R19. Motion was made by Councilmember Thompson, seconded by Councilmember Kaiser. Mayor Pro Tem Edwards, Councilmembers Davis, Gutierrez, Larson, Thompson, Kaiser, Crawford voted yes, no one voted no. Motion passed. Item number 6, resolution number 17R20. Motion was made by Mayor Pro Tem Edwards, seconded by Councilmember Davis. Mayor Pro Tem Edwards, Councilmembers Davis, Gutierrez, Larson, Thompson, Kaiser, Crawford voted yes, no one voted no. Motion passed. Item number 7, ordinance number 17T11, first reading. Motion was made by Mayor Pro Tem Edwards, seconded by Councilmember Kaiser. Mayor Pro Tem Edwards, Councilmembers Davis, Gutierrez, Larson, Thompson, Kaiser, Crawford voted yes, no one voted no. Motion passed. Item number 8, resolution number 17R21. Motion was made by Councilmember Thompson, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Edwards. Mayor Pro Tem Edwards, Councilmembers Davis, Gutierrez, Larson, Thompson, Kaiser, Crawford voted yes, no one voted no. Motion passed.
Very good. Thank you, ma'am. Next item that we have on the agenda this evening, we have announcements by the city manager. Mr. Kessel tells me he has nothing further. Next item is item 10, future agenda items requested by the council. Anything that we need to have on a future agenda that we don't currently have before us?
Mr. Mayor, you got the information about the economic development?
Indeed. And so Mr. Edwards has already asked that we discuss that when we have our joint meeting with the Economic Development Corporation. Okay. I have a couple of items this evening. On our agenda for next week, I'd like to have an agenda item for establishing the Main Street Committee of this council. It'll be made up of 3 voting members and myself, and we will begin to do some work on the feasibility of improvements to Main Street, including the bond money that we have from the 2010 election. I'd like to ask staff to give us an update on Schertz Parkway and the rebuild. There's a lot of residents that are quite curious about that. It's a challenging drive. We've done a little bit of work, but an update would be really helpful. And while it's not technically a request for a future agenda item for the City Council, and this is a first for me since I've been mayor, pertinent to some events that have transpired over the course of the last 3 weeks and pursuant to Article 4, Section 4.09, subsection A of our city charter, I'm calling a special meeting of this body for this coming Monday, April 3rd at 6 p.m. to discuss the development agreement executed and agreed to by the City of Cibolo and Cibolo Turnpike LP, consult with our attorney, and discuss Schertz city policy with regard to the tolling of roads, both involving newly constructed roads and existing public roads. We will post the agenda for this meeting no later than 5 p.m. on Friday, March 31st. All right, next item that we have on the agenda this evening is item number 11, announcements by the mayor and council members, and we'll start with Mayor Pro Tem Edwards.
Mr. Mayor, I do want to thank the city management and the staff for the retreat. Well done, well done. And also the Hampton Inn. We had a chance to go out and visit with the management and the investors out of Colorado, and they did a really great job. $2.5 million, I think, is what they actually invested into the facility, and it looks darn good, darn good. So kudos, and thank you to the chamber as well.
Excellent, thank you. Mr. Davis? I'm sorry, Yes, Mr. Davis. We're out of order, but we're going to go with the number 1, Mr. Davis.
I'd like to echo the Mayor Pro Tem's comments on the Hampton. It was a very nice facility, a nice event, and I'd like to extend my thanks to the Parks Department for a wonderful event over the weekend with the music in the park. It was a great event, a lot of good times out there. Look forward to seeing a lot more of those in the future. I also had the opportunity of attending my first meeting with the Housing Authority. I look forward to bringing some information to the council in the near future on some of their activities that they've got planned. That's it.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Mr. Gutierrez?
Just want to pass some kudos out to Buffalo Valley Youth Association. Great turnout for the Saturday kickoff on the softball fields.
Mr. Larson? Nothing. Mr. Thompson?
Just want to give thanks to James and Deborah and the audit committee. It may not seem like a huge thing, but the amount of material and the transparency that's being generated is really positive. And so kudos to our financial staff for making sure that we are up to date with all the regulations that we need to be, and just encourage them to continue that.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Kaiser?
I don't have anything.
Very good. Mr. Crawford?
Nothing, thank you.
Council, again, I've called a special meeting of this council for Monday evening. I apologize for adding a meeting. However, there are a number of things in this development agreement. If you haven't read it yet, we will be getting you a copy that could potentially directly affect the city of Schertz, and we need to talk about it. And it needs its own session. It warrants its own time. So that said, if there's nothing else from staff or from council, then we stand adjourned.